Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to our October community meeting. For today's meeting, we will be starting with community celebration, then product roadmap updates from Akshat. Then we're going to go over a couple exciting new updates in cloud, including email alerts and the Databricks SQL integration. Then we'll dig into some demos related to GX Core. So we'll hear about better object configuration diagnostics, DBT tutorial. The migration guide is out. Then we'll walk through that. And I will also discuss a new GX issues board in GitHub. And then close out with some friendly reminders. So starting with community celebration, as always, we take these first few minutes to recognize the individuals in our community who have taken extra steps to support other members of the community since our last community meeting. So the folks listed here have done just that. They're answering questions, answering other people's questions around GX in both the GX Discourse Forum and in Slack. So thank you to you all for all of your support. Additionally, I wanted to highlight an issue that came in from a community member. This issue was due to a bug in which trying to send Slack notifications would result in an error. This was due to mismatched typing and formatting of objects in dictionary. MathsWorld submitted a contribution that corrected the way that we access the validation result dictionary. So thank you so much, MathsWorld. Additionally, I just wanted to flag that we hosted a Reddit AMA last month. Thanks to everyone who posted to it. We got some really great questions from the community, and we had a really fun time hosting. So yeah, feel free to give that a look. And I'll post the link in the chat in a moment. And now I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Akshat, who's going to give you the product roadmap updates. All right, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Akshat. As Polly mentioned, I'm the product manager. I'm here to talk about some of the things we've worked on recently and some of the things we're going to be releasing soon. So the biggest news from our last workshop and now is that we have released a migration guide, which is, as the name suggests, meant to support you migrating your objects and entities in GX OSS from v1.0 to GX Core v1.x. So Nevin is going to talk about that a little bit later, but if you're migrating and you need some help doing that, definitely check out the migration guide. Other than that, we have made some improvements to the checkpoint experience when you're working with checkpoints in GX Core. So primarily, we're trying to reduce misconfiguration errors here, where if you are trying to run a checkpoint that you've updated, but you haven't saved, we will now prompt you to save that checkpoint to cloud or to your local disk so that you're not trying to run a checkpoint in your own system and then having GX run something else because you haven't actually saved the checkpoint locally or in cloud. So check that out. And beyond that, a recent release for us in GX Cloud is we now support Databricks SQL in cloud. We have always supported this in core, but we now also support it in cloud, which means you can now use GX Cloud to create and manage expectations for your relevant data assets that live within your Databricks SQL warehouse. So that's a really cool improvement, an expansion of what we're able to support for users within GX Cloud, and another way for you to use core and cloud together if you're a Databricks SQL user. So some cool stuff that recently came out. Moving on to what's coming soon. In core specific related activity, the biggest thing that's coming is we are expanding our support of different Python versions. As a general goal, we want to support modern versions of Python. And so expanding support to Python 3.12 is something that's really important to us and something that we're working on actively. Beyond that, looking at cloud, we have support for two features that we think will help improve your ability to create and manage expectations. The first one is custom SQL, which makes it so that you can now bring more custom business logic into cloud. So you can write your own SQL in cloud, and we will execute that and allow you to run validations that may not be supported out of the box by our expectations. So some cool stuff there. And also what we're calling dynamic parameters, which is your ability to set thresholds on your expectations relative to previous results. So, for example, something like I expect the threshold for this expectation to be X% of any previous values that I had, or above or below the previous validation results that I got. So it makes it much easier for you to define expectations on assets where the data might be constantly changing. You don't have to keep coming back into the app and updating those thresholds, which would be a lot of work. And we know that. And so this makes it a lot easier for you. And then beyond that, and we've talked about this in recent workshops too, we're continuing to work on an improved cloud experience. And here the goal is to just simplify it so that when you're focused on a specific task within GX Cloud, you're able to focus on that task, and the user experience is optimized to help you complete that task as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So a lot of cool stuff going on. We have a lot more planned. If you have any specific thoughts or feedback or any questions or anything that you want to share with us at all, really, there's an email down below on this slide, productfeedback@greatexpectations.io. Please reach out. We respond to every email. We love hearing from people that are using our product, and it really helps us learn what's working and what isn't. So definitely do that. And thank you, Molly. I hand it back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Akshat. I'm going to immediately hand it over to Jose, who's going to talk to us about email alerts. You are muted.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jose Tovar. I believe I'm sharing my screen now. You can see our GX Cloud screen. Yes. Awesome. So for those who don't know me, Jose Tovar, I'm a software engineer here at GX, working with our cloud product. And I'm really excited to give you a demo of our new feature, email alerts. This is going to be a short demo because we've made it really easy for you to get started using email alerts, because we believe that this is a really important feature so that every time you run a validation, you can immediately receive email notifications if something fails. That's the main focus. And there are two ways in which you can get started with email alerts. One is if you add an email alert, an asset in GX Cloud, you're immediately enabled by default to receive email notifications or alerts every time you run a validation, and if that validation fails. Or if you're interested in any other asset in GX Cloud, you can also select that asset and enable email alerts so that you can be notified when something happens. So I'm going to walk you through that flow. I have this asset here, and I want to receive email alerts. I think it's already enabled, but it's going to be pretty much the same idea. So you select the asset, and then you go to either the expectations or validations tab, and you have this alerts button. So you click alerts, and yeah, because I added this asset, it is enabled by default, but obviously if you have it turned off, just simply turn it back on or turn it on, and you're good to go. You will be receiving email alerts if validation fails. So I'm going to go ahead and run this validation so that we can see how that works. And this is as a user level configuration, meaning if you enable email alerts for a particular asset, you enable it for yourself. So if there's a separate user that is also interested or is interested in different assets, they're going to need to log into GX Cloud and enable email alerts on their end. So the validation passed, and I received my email alert telling me that for this particular asset, 3 of 18 expectations failed. So I can just click on view result, and this will take me to the validation result that failed so that I can look at it and take the necessary steps to address the situation. So that's email alerts in GX Cloud.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jose. We have one more demo related to GX Cloud before we move on to GX Core. So next is Gabriel, who'll be talking about Databricks SQL integration.
Hello, I'm Gabriel, developers here at Great Expectations. I'm about to share my screen. Everybody see the GX Cloud application? Okay. All right, so about a month ago, we added support for Databricks SQL in the UI, which means you can actively manage and create Databricks SQL data sources from the UI. So if if you have no assets, it'll look like this. There will now be this Databricks SQL button. If not, it will show up when you go to add a new asset. So I click here, it'll ask me for some information. Right now, the only way you can connect is with a connection string, but we're looking to add support to connect via just different parameters. This is what the connection string looks like. You can click into here to see the details of this. I'm going to walk through what this looks like in Databricks. So if you're in Databricks, the best way to find this information is to go to your SQL warehouses. And let me go ahead and start this. And then you can click in here, go to connection details, and you're going to need the server name and the HTTP path. And then you're also going to need a token, which you can create from right here. We do recommend that you use a service principal for this, but for this demo, I'm just going to use my personal access token. There's details of how to create a service principal in our docs. So once I have the host name and the HTTP path and my token, I can connect. Let's just look over the catalog that we're going to connect to. We're going to connect to this demo catalog and this Lakitu schema, and these are all the tables that we should expect to show up once we've connected. So let me go back to the app. Let me paste in my full connections string. And then it might take a little bit because my warehouse has to spin up. But yeah, so now you can see these are all of the tables that I just showed in that catalog. I'm just going to do these three for now. All right, so these are all added. One thing to note is that in the application, the tooltip refers to this as the database, but just note for Databricks, this is actually your catalog. So let's look at one of these. Click into there. It's going to get the schema here. And now let's profile the data. And it should just take a few more seconds. But while that's, well, okay, need to wait a couple more seconds. But with this data source should work just like all of our other data sources there. It's finished, so I can create an expectation. So let's see. Let's check fumbles. Okay, so let's say that we expect the minimum fumbles to be about, let's say, 0 fumbles. We never expect any fumbles. So I'm gonna save this and then validate it. And yeah, and all of the expectations that work for any other data source should work for Databricks SQL. You can look at the result, and yes, obviously people do fumble. So in the NFL, so we got a failure. But yeah, that's Databricks SQL.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabriel. Okay, so now we've gone through a couple demos for GX Cloud. We're now gonna move on talking about GX Core for the rest of the meeting. First up, we'll hear from Chetan, who will talk about better object configuration diagnostics.
Yep, let me just share my screen. All righty. Whoops. All right, so I'm here to talk about object configuration and the improvements we made around actually defining and setting up your workflows. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't give a little bit of background on, why this was important to us. Firstly, I think GX has had the reputation, and I think rightfully so, that it's a little bit hard to configure, right? It's firstly, incorrect configuration would take some time to actually manifest or show up. You wouldn't get fast feedback. You would sort of, upon connecting to your data or running a checkpoint, see a misconfiguration as opposed to actual definition time. And that sort of gap or lag in time would make it really hard to diagnose, issues at hand. Additionally, we had this implicit requirement that you had to save all of your objects. I don't think we were super clear to the community or users that you needed to save everything in your workflow before running to avoid unintended sort of side effects or problems. And so these two have been sort of guiding principles in our development of V1, and we very consciously have worked to fix that. And we've heard the community and I think done a lot of work to improve upon the experience around configuration. And so the first thing is we want to have very fast feedback loops when it comes to setting up your workflows. And so things like adopting Pydantic that tell you, exactly what's wrong with your data, what you need to do to fix it, and basically providing users with prescriptive, useful error messages to point them in the right direction. That was really important to us. And we've now made it an explicit requirement that you need to save everything. And we're very clear about when you need to save, why you need to save, as well as the appropriate API calls or workflows you need to take to ensure that everything in your workflow before you productionalize it is in the right sort of state. And so I want to talk a little bit about saving objects. By saving, I mean using our store API to persist your configurations to cloud or the file system. And this is particularly important for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we want to have consistency across sessions. So, in theory, you should define your GX workflow once, save everything, and then subsequent uses will be able to pull it down from whatever backend you're using. Additionally, if you're working with other users, say in cloud, we want to have one source of truth or one definition for your workflow or for the domain objects that make up that workflow. And so this just keeps it simpler, keeps it safer to use, and mitigates possible issues around having multiple definitions. Additionally, the GX domain model relies on a lot of sort of internal linkages. This is maybe a little less important to the end user, but having clear defined relationships between objects like a checkpoint and the validation definition under it and the result object that those two create is really important for telling a complete and thorough story about your data through the lens of GX. And we want to make sure we are adhering to those relationships, and we are, making sure we don't lose any of that information in the process. And then lastly, we want to just avoid unintended behavior. If I modify the state of an object in memory and there's a different definition in the backend or in the file system, that sort of incongruency creates a bit of confusion about, what is the right checkpoint or what is the right validation. And we just want to be very clear in having people define, what the source of truth is, and then using that to, tell a story about your data. And so I think the best way to demonstrate this is through a quick demo. So I have a Jupyter notebook here, and in short, this is just going from, very basic steps of getting a context all the way down to creating a checkpoint and running that checkpoint. And in the process of doing that, I can show you maybe where you'd go wrong, and then what the error messages or diagnostics are that'll help you mitigate those problems to ensure that we don't run into any of the issues that I alluded to in the slides. So I'll just go cell by cell. I'm going to import GX. I'm going to define a context. I'm picking a file context here, but any sort of environment, ephemeral or cloud, works here. I'm going to grab an asset and a batch definition. I'm going to use our very favorite taxi data, which we always use for our demos as our data here. And then I'm going to define a number of expectations about that taxi data. I'm going to say, I expect the passenger count mean to be between 1 and 3, and I expect there to be no null values in that column. And one thing I want to be very cognizant about mentioning is this particular API call. So context.suites.add is our canonical way of persisting objects in V1. You can use context.add
and then any collection of domain objects between data sources, checkpoints, validation definitions, and then whatever CRUD sort of verb to make modifications to the state of your data. And by doing this, we're ensuring that our system, our project, has reference to this suite for later usage, right? So in running this, I can pull up my project config, go to expectations, and see that things are persisted just fine, right? And if I was using cloud or ephemeral, same sort of story would be there. Now, when I go to actually define my validation definition, where I'm linking that data and the actual suite, note that I'm omitting this call, right? The analogous context.validation definitions.add is something that I should use if I want to persist and say, hey, this validation definition is something that I'm happy with and I want to save to my project. The fact that I miss that, and in the definition of a checkpoint also miss that call, results in a state where if I go to run this cell where I'm running this checkpoint, the end result that it generates may not have reference to the parent checkpoint, the parent validation definition. And if it comes to a point where I want to aggregate all my validation results by this checkpoint, or tell a sort of a historical story about this piece of data, this validation definition over time, I might not have the requisite sort of pointers or references to do so, and I may lose that context. And I won't know that until far later downstream when I'm reviewing my data or reviewing my sort of project workflow. And so the changes we've made here is if I go to run this checkpoint and I don't take those requisite steps that I should have, I'm going to run into an error which says, hey, here is a sort of aggregation of a number of errors around state management. Firstly, your validation definition, you just have to add it to your data context before you can actually use it in this workflow. Here is the API call that we want you to use to actually save it. And then the checkpoint has the same issue. So the two issues that we had noted are caught by this diagnostic sort of workflow. And so I'm just going to take the information that GX has given me, and I'm going to add these. And then the other one was checkpoints. All right, so I'm just making the calls that GX is telling me to make. Both these values are now persisted. And now if I go to rerun that run call, things run just fine. And I can confirm that all the references and everything that I want under the hood are there, right? If I go to the meta field of the result object, we have a pointer to the validation that was defined above and a similar pointer to the checkpoint, right? And so especially something like cloud, where we have this UI that's going to tell you historical sort of runs and information, we just want to make sure that this is a smooth process, is guaranteed, and you're not losing any information about your data as you continue to use GX. And then lastly, I want to talk about, what if I modify the state of my object in memory? So say, I don't like the result format of summary. I want to turn it to basic. If I go to run this checkpoint is now different in memory than it is in my file system or in cloud. And that, that difference between the two creates multiple sources of truth, right? I don't know what my checkpoint is. I don't know if this was an accidental fix. Maybe I was like tinkering with the state, whatever it may be. We want to be very clear about what is my checkpoint. And once I'm happy with the state of that, I'm saving it so that I and other users on my team have that one definition to work from. So I go to run and it's going to say, hey, similar error, but a different one. Your checkpoint has actually changed since you've last saved it. If you're happy with these changes, use this API call to ensure that you're saving those changes to the file system such that, everyone using this now knows that that's what that checkpoint is. So I'm going to do checkpoint.save and checkpoint.run. Yep. So it's not the flashiest feature, but the idea is that it's very much trying to support your workflows and allow you to more accurately and consistently run GX to, figure out what to expect from your data.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that demo and walkthrough. I'm next going to hand it off to Nevin, who is going to walk through a couple things. First, the DB2 tutorial, and then also the new migration guide for migrating to GX Core. Go ahead, Nevin.
Sorry, just getting my Zoom controls all set. Hopefully you can see
Sure.
my screen here.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Just give you a quick intro. My name is Nevin. I'm a senior developer advocate here at Great Expectations. The first thing I'm going to share with you today is a DBT tutorial that was a collaboration between ourselves at GX and Jonathan Porter over at Reddit. So together we helped create this tutorial where you can see GX in action with DBT. I've sent a link in chat, so if you want to go through it yourself, you're more than welcome to. I'm not going to go through every little element here as well, but I will give you some of the highlights in terms of what this tutorial actually covers. So as you can see, it is using GX with DBT. This tutorial has a few prerequisites. It does require you to know some basic knowledge of Python, SQL, and Docker. You will need to have either Docker desktop or your Docker engine of choice up and running. So it does spin up some Docker containers in order to serve the Postgres database. It also uses Airflow as its orchestrator as well as DBT. So it's pretty much as simple as going through a few setup steps where you clone a repo that we've created for you to that contains a lot of the configuration. We don't go through every single line of the configuration or anything like that, but it is set up for you to go through yourself to take a look at how each of the different containers are set up and interact with each other. We do highlight a few things in here so that you are aware of how these things are configured. But again, like I said, it doesn't go through every single actual line or anything like that. Once you've done a bit of the configuration, set up things like the SSH keys, you start up the Docker services. You will see quite a few containers that are spun up, a few Airflow ones, the actual database ones, a DBT container, one specific container for Great Expectations, where you will be setting up your checkpoints, your expectations, and things of that nature. And then finally, once that is all set up, you'll be using Airflow to orchestrate everything. It's a pretty interesting tutorial. It is maybe a little bit long, but it does take you through all of the different elements. So I do encourage you to take some time and go through it at your leisure. At a high level, I don't think it'll take anyone who's familiar with any of these different technologies all that long, maybe on the scale of about an hour. But if it takes you longer than that, don't feel bad or anything. There is quite a bit of content, so I do strongly encourage you to take your time and make sure everything's up and running. Hopefully, you'll get a taste of how it could work within your own configuration, your own workflow. If you have any feedback, please let us know. We're more than happy to hear about how we can maybe improve this tutorial in the future as well. And that is our DBT tutorial. Switching over, I am next going to talk about our GX V0 to V1 migration guide. Molly earlier linked this in, or she just linked it in our chat as well. But this is our migration guide, and I know many of you have been waiting for this to come out. So I want to first of all, thank our team, particularly a few of the team members who are here on this call, Bill and Tyler, for helping out with building this guide. This is very much a work of the entire team. And so it took a lot of effort, but I'm very thankful for our team for writing it. I'm merely the presenter. I do not want to take any of the credit here. This is all their work. So this guide here, as linked in the chat, is pretty extensive and pretty comprehensive. It goes through all of the different ways that you might want to configure or might want to migrate your code from V0. So I guess the latest was 0.18.19, something like that. I guess I can just check up here. Well, 21 was the latest one that we had. But from any of those previous versions moving into V1, you should be set for this. We go through things like migrating your contexts. The more interesting bits are a little bit down below when we talk about our domain objects. We go through examples of, expectation suites, expectations. We go through what the differences would look like between JSON, the different JSON stores. So in V0, you would have an example here of what it would look like. If you click over on the tab, you would see how the same expectation suite would be configured in V1. So you can take a look at those two. If you want to see a side-by-side comparison, what I would recommend doing is simply copying the code, into your favorite editor and then opening a new window, a new tab, and then copying the V1 code, and you can see it side by side. For each one of these, we go through some of the fields and talk about what they actually mean and what they actually are. We also point out a few differences in the fields themselves as well. One of them that I'll point out here is in V0, we have something called GE Cloud ID, which is what it sounds like, the ID that is particular to cloud. But now in V1, for example, now this is just called ID. So in V0, you can see that in our expectation suite, we have a GE Cloud ID. In this case, this was null. But in V1, it is simply just an ID. And the team can correct me if I'm wrong here, but all of our objects, top-level objects now, have their own unique ID as well. So I'm not going to go through every little bit of this migration guide, but you can see here we do have examples for how you would migrate API calls. For things like if you're using pandas, your YAML configs, we have examples of V0 and V1. This is mislabeled. I'll correct that. But you can see here that this is what it looks like in V0, and then this is what it looks like in V1. And again, we have a list of the fields in particular for those configurations, what they mean, and how they've been changed, if they've been changed at all. So I'll go through this a little bit more. We have pandas file creation through the API. If you have a data frame config, this is what it would look like and the differences. And you can see here, I don't know if you can see the scroll bar on the right here, but we do have quite a long guide with lots of examples. So if you're looking for something specific, obviously take a search on the page for what you're looking for. I'm going to go through this really at a really high level, but we have Snowflake, we had pandas that we just saw, we have Postgres, Spark, and many, many more examples. If you have any questions now, I'll maybe ask Molly, should we take them now, or you would throw them in the chat, or save them till the end?
I think there's questions specifically to this. We have time for some now if there are any.
Sure. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to speak up, throw them in the chat. We do have lots of GX members here who can help field the questions if I can answer them myself. But going on beyond that, then, just as people are maybe formulating their questions, we also go through things like checkpoints and data context variables as well. So we have a couple of use cases at the bottom. So, in this case, we have a full-fledged example of a pretty basic checkpoint creation and execution. And you can see the differences here between V0 and V1. Again, using some example data sources and expectations that you might be interested in.
Yeah, can I add one comment?
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Nevin, for presenting that. If we're also welcome to welcome any feedback. If you go, we have tried to be as comprehensive as we can, but there's lots of ways you configure GX, and so we may have missed your way. And if we have, just let us know, because we'd like to improve this doc and help people get migrated over. So just want to throw that out there.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'll mention as well, at GX, we're obviously very, very proud of the work that's been done to create or to get to V1. So we do encourage you to, go through this migration sooner rather than later, so that you're fully up to speed on all the enhancements and features of V1 rather than sticking with V0 point whatever you're on. And so the sooner you migrate, the easier the path forward would be for you going forward, obviously. But this guide will live here. It'll be our best effort to keep it up to date, but obviously, it'll be most effective if you try to use it now. Okay, it doesn't look like there are any questions in chat. I'll ask one more time. If there's anyone who wants to ask questions in person, we'll be happy to field those as well.
If people have any, they can also post them and then we can kind of circle back.
Definitely. And if you have questions later on while you're going through this, I encourage you to post in discourse where we can hopefully answer the questions there, and then we'll have a running history of it in case anyone has the same questions in the future. And I'll maybe put Molly on the spot here and ask her to link to discourse in chat.
I can do that. I can do that right now.
Awesome. Cool. I'll give the time back to Molly then.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Nevin, for walking through both of those. And yeah, thanks to everyone for the work on the migration guide. It's very exciting to have that out. And I know a lot of people were anxiously awaiting. So it's very exciting. I'm gonna just get my screen shared really quick. Making sure I have the right one. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is GX Issues Board. So the GX Issues Board, we just made this public at the end of last week. It's a GitHub project. And the reason we created it was basically to create transparency around which GX GitHub issues are GX supported, which ones are community supported, as well as serve as a space for GX engineers to track their progress in the open on issues related to GX support. So I'm just going to talk really quickly about how the difference between a GX supported issue, a community supported issue, or something that's not supported. So if something is GX supported, it's an issue. It is related to part of the code base that's tested and actively maintained with new GX core or GX Cloud releases. So the steps that will be taken for these issues are we'll work to reproduce the issue. And if they can be reproduced in our end, it'll be prioritized by engineering. Then, and I'll talk about the different types of issues, and then I can show off different parts of the board. So then community supported issues. If an issue is labeled community supported, it's related to a part of the code base that's not tested and actively maintained with new GX core, GX Cloud releases. But we are open to accepting PRs and working with community members on that for addressing the issue and ongoing maintenance. So when something is community supported, we will label it with a label that is community supported. So that'll be clear. Additionally, there are just certain things that are no longer supported. As an example, anything that is from previous to 1.0, previous to GX core, is something that we are not going to be supporting going forward. I went through and closed out old issues that were related to anything before GX core. If there was an issue that is still an issue in GX core, please feel free to resubmit it. Okay, so if something is labeled, if something's not supported, it will be labeled as non-supported. If it is community supported, it will be labeled as such. Everything else can be assumed to be GX supported. So the tabs on this issues board is, you can see all issues in the first tab. Then these first two are both including things that are GX supported, issues by status and reported bugs. They're different views that are utilized by the team. There's additionally a community supported tab, which doesn't have anything on it at the moment. But the first time we get a new issue that is something that fits in that bucket, it will get the community support label and it will show up on this tab. And if you ever want to find the information again, this README, you can just click the project details. There's also some information here on submitting an issue. But yeah, anyway, this is the issues board. And the hope here is that provides more transparency and people can just have an understanding of what we're tackling. And the status. I just realized, let's see, I didn't have the link prepared to post. I'm going to do that right now. Just grab this. One moment. There we go. Okay. So now we can push on to closing announcements. So I'm going to get those started. Okay, so closing announcements. We talked about this last time, but I wanted to talk about it just one more time, at least, which is that this is the order in which we are prioritizing issues going forward, which is first is if there's, issues and questions. So first, if there's a GitHub issue in PR, that is top priority. Next is questions posted to Discourse. And then after that is questions posted to Slack. So what this means for you is that your questions will be answered more quickly if you post in Discourse than if you post in Slack. And you can get more detailed on that on the Git support page. And additionally, here's our support policy. Okay, additionally, if you haven't tried GX Cloud yet, you can do so for free at app.greatexpectations.io. Additionally, you can join a workshop. We have a few workshops coming up. The next one is next week, getting started with GX Cloud and Databricks, the new integration that was presented about earlier. Additionally, November 5th, getting started with GX Cloud and Postgres, and then 19th, getting started with GX Cloud and Snowflake. So if you want to sign up for any of those workshops, you can go to this link. I also posted it in the chat. Additionally, if we really value your feedback, so please reach out to us anytime. There's a feedback category in Discourse. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you so that we can be aware of frictions and issues that are happening. Additionally, we do these community meetings on a regular basis every couple months. So to keep your calendar up to date with future community events, make sure to follow the GX community calendar. And if you want to contribute to future community meetings, please reach out to me on Discourse or on Slack. Okay, that is everything we had today. I'll just ask one more time if there's any questions about anything that was presented today. If you do come up with questions, especially as you're going through the migration guide, like Bill said, if you find things that are like your use case is missing, for example, please post in feedback. Please let us know. We'd love to hear it. And thanks to y'all for joining. We'll see you next time.